Hello there, and welcome back to IOM Belgium and Luxembourg's podcast. Today we have Among Resi, who works for IOM Thailand and is a program officer for the Counter-Trafficking and Migration Protection Unit in Thailand. Welcome, Among.
Hi, Milika. Nice to see you all. It's so nice to be here with you guys.
Thank you, and welcome, and good to have you on board. So I'm going to just dive right in. And for our listeners, IOM Thailand has been congratulated by the Thai government for the lengths this mission has taken in providing support to victims of trafficking in Thailand and for Thai nationals returning from abroad. So Among, could you tell us a little more on the topic of trafficking within the Thai context?
Trafficking is one of the priority concern of the Thai government. Here we have a lot of cases of the trafficking, not only for the forced labors, but also for the sexual exploitation. There is a report from the US government that mentioning that in Thailand, despite that the government has doing a lot of efforts in tackling the trafficking issues, but the big concern is on the prosecutions of the GIP cases itself. With this pandemic as well, it's also become one of the challenge for the prosecutor to prosecute the cases. But still, based on the report from the Thai government last year in 2020, they did a lot of the prosecution of the GIP cases, mostly of the child sexual exploitation cases.
Okay. Thank you for that. Going into our second question, we know that IOM assists victims of trafficking in countries of origin and host countries. But does IOM Thailand also work on prevention of trafficking? And if they do, could you explain what this entails?
We do a lot of the prevention programming because we also understand that prevention is like a good or like the important component when we talk about the combating trafficking. And what we did in IOM Thailand, we do a lot of the awareness raising programming. We work with the NGOs. We also work with the government, but also with the universities to improve the awareness, not only for the community, but also from the government's perspective on what is trafficking. Because sometimes here the difficulty is like from the government side, for instance, how to interpret the trafficking legislations in Thailand. So this also needs the support from our side, like how to implement this, how to guide them to interpret the trafficking law. And also from the community itself, we also need to enhance their awareness, their understanding, what is the trafficking. And Thailand, we also not, like you mentioned, we are also having a lot of the migrants who come to Thailand to work. So it's also another part that we need to take into account how to improve their awareness on the safe migrations while they are working in Thailand. So it could prevent them from the traffickers. And for Thai national, supported by the community, NGOs, academics, university, and also government and IOM. IOM doing a lot of the intervention we do in the borders between Myanmar and Thailand, but also Cambodia, to really provide an understanding on the safe migration, the risk of trafficking. And in the meantime, we also have targeting specifically fishing industry sectors in Thailand, because this is one of the area as well where the forced labors and also trafficking also found in Thailand. So we did a lot of campaigns. We provide them with the IC material, ranging for how to do the safe migrations, knowing your wage, how to calculate your wages, and knowing your right during the employment process. So such kind of information, it is important, and we develop those EIC materials not only in English language, but also in the language of the migrants itself. So we do hope that everyone could understand, we could provide more accurate information to them.
Wonderful. And I was actually going to save this question for last, but I think you've already sort of touched upon it. But as we know at IOM, identifying and referring a trafficked person is a process that may take time. So many trafficked persons might be at risk of being removed from the territory before their identification is completed because they are undocumented. So how can governments and organizations ensure that the rights of victims of trafficking are respected and that victims have access to the right services?
This is something why the element of partnership is really important, and IOM, I think, we plays major roles in here. When we talk about the cross-border trafficking, for instance, we also facilitating the government to set up like a bilateral meeting, also to enhance their knowledge and to do more like advocacy levels intervention, such as in Thailand and Cambodia. We develop like we supporting the government to implement their case managements on the return and reintegration. So we really trying to advocate also to mention that the right of the victim could not be taken away. So we need to have like follow up action. Both countries, both the country of origins and also the destination country, need to collaborate each other in order to ensure that their rights is fulfilled in the on all of the process of the regions and also reintegration. So we do follow up assistance and care to the victim. It's not necessary IOM to do alone, but we also work closely with the government, with the NGO to ensure that the follow-up care and assistance is still be conducted and implemented, but of course in the to fulfill their rights, the victim rights. So that's what we do. So we are not only advocating or doing some policy advocacy levels, but also we do direct victim assistance to fill the gap, because sometimes the regulation, the policy is in place, but we also understand that one of the challenges to implement the regulation is also resource management, for instance, human resources to do that. So I am trying to present to fill this gap, and we work against with the NGOs, CSOs to implement this where it's possible, like today with the COVID-19 situation. So we work closely with the NGOs to implement this. And we also have dedicated team member to monitor the assistance and also to implement the direct assistance where it's necessary.
Okay. And so this care and assistance you're talking about, is this related to the long-term assistance and reintegration that IOM does for trafficking victims who have returned to Thailand, or is it something separate?
So when we talk about the reintegrations, we really depend on the victim needs, because our reintegrations programmings were designed based on the victim's needs. So we not just like this is IOM's program, but we do together with the victims, we create this programming. We develop the actions plan for their reintegrations program. So we set the milestone that we want to achieve for this reintegrations program, and we do and we provide them with the long-term programming and also daily supports for to implement their reintegrations programming, including the victim that's coming from Belgium. We do a lot of the follow-up assistance here in Thailand.
Wonderful. And so this actually leads into the last question, but can you actually describe the work IOM Thailand does with IOM Belgium in terms of counter-trafficking?
We do a lot of activity together with the IOM Belgium, not only for the victim assistance, but also we do awareness raising programming. I mean, like we sharing information. I know that like IOM Belgium doing a lot on the return and reintegrations programming, and we share our information together. In addition, IOM Belgium with IOM Thailand, we also have a lot of programming for the return and reintegrations to ensure that victim who return from the Belgium is still continue to be supported until they could empower themselves and they could come up from the trafficking situation that they experience for. So in this context, we try really to maintain the expectations from the victim, but also the expectation from our side as the organization. So we do together work collaboratively with the IOM Belgium and the victim of trafficking to implement the return and reintegrations programs in Thailand. So that's among other activities that we have with the IOM Belgium. Of course, we have a lot more activity rather than that, such as in the like I mentioned, we share all of the informations together, but we also do some the capacity building together, sharing our expertise each other. I think that's a wonderful partnerships, and we hope that this partnership, this collaboration could continue again, because this is something very useful, not only for IOMs, but also for the beneficiaries and also for the community as a lessons learned and the programming from our programming.
Great. Thank you so much, Among, for coming on board today and speaking to us about counter-trafficking and within the IOM Thailand context. And it was such an insightful conversation that we've had today.